Hello everyone and welcome to the Red Path. My name is Dara and today we are going to be kicking off a new 3-part mini-series about attending your first Warhammer tournament. This video is going to cover all the pre-tournament essentials, from hunting down and finding an event to getting ready the week before. If you've never attended a Warhammer tournament and are looking where to start, this video is for you. So let's grab ourselves a brew and dive in. So you've risen to the top of your local store playgroup. You need a fun, fresh new challenge, but you don't know where or who to turn to next. Or maybe your local group just isn't that fun to play games with and you're looking for a variety of new opponents that you can have a good time throwing dice with. There's a lot of different reasons to want to attend a tournament, and all of them are equally valid. You don't need to be an expert at the game to take part, and you'll find the vast majority of tournament attendees are good people who are just looking to get some games in, have some drinks, and make new friends. If you're on the fence about going to a tournament, I really recommend you take the plunge and jump in. The chances are you'll have a lot of fun, make some new friends, and get to throw down against a variety of interesting armies and face new challenges. But where do you begin? Finding and preparing for a Warhammer tournament can be a daunting task. For anyone who's decided to take that leap and attend an event, sourcing this event is the first hurdle to overcome, and one that many people fall at, though usually through no fault of their own. There is a distinct lack of centralized information for tournaments, and for someone who is brand new to this experience, it can be a really difficult scene to break into, especially if you don't have any friends who are pre-existing tournament goers. Today, I'm going to help you get past this and provide all the guidance I wish I had had when I was getting into Warhammer tournaments. I'm going to explain a few things. How to find a tournament to attend, the most important information you need to know once you've picked an event, how to make a personal plan in the lead up to the event, including what to do in the week before, and finally, a little bit about the mindset around tournaments and how to look after your mental health during what can be a stressful time. Let's start at the beginning, choosing an event to attend. If you have just decided to jump into tournaments, this can actually be quite a tricky decision to make, and a host of factors are going to influence what tournament you decide to go to. These include how much free time and disposable income you have, location, transportation, and accommodation around the event. Are you attending this event by yourself or as part of a group? And most importantly, what type of event do you want to attend? So let's talk about that last one for just a moment. Choosing the type of tournament that is right for you is really important to ensuring that you have a positive experience. Broadly speaking, tournaments are organized and labeled depending on two factors: how many games are played during the event and how many players are attending that event. The smallest of these is an RTT, or Rogue Trader tournament. This event normally consists of 3 games or rounds and allows for 10 to 20 players. Usually it takes place in a single day and is the most common type of tournament played. Local gaming scenes, stores, and small regional groups will host regular RTTs. They are easy to set up and generally have a very friendly atmosphere. They're great events if you don't have the time to dedicate a full weekend to 40k. If you are thinking about trying out events, a local RTT is a great starting point. There is a good chance you're going to know 1 or 2 people attending. It doesn't cost much, and for the most part, people are there to try weird and wonderful lists and not take things too seriously. Next up is a GT, or Grand Tournament. These used to be the big events back in the day, but the scene has grown exponentially, so the name is a bit of a misnomer. A Grand Tournament typically takes place over 2 days, normally a Saturday and Sunday, and involves 5 to 6 games of 40k. It caters for 24 to 60 players, the total capacity normally being set by the tournament organizer, or TO. GTs are the bread and butter of the competitive scene, and the majority of tournament players will attend at least 1 GT a year, or you can be crazy like me and attend tons of them. GTs are a really good test of player skill, as 5 rounds of 40k will separate out the player pool into a stratified cohort, meaning that by round 4 and onwards you are very likely to be playing someone of equal skill to yourself. If you are confident in your ability and want to see how far you can push yourself, a GT is the event for you. Now, we're going to move on into the big leagues. Beyond GTs, there are two other events which I'll lump together, Majors and Super Majors. These events are massive, normally catering to hundreds of players and typically consisting of a minimum of 6 games. The biggest events of these are quite famous, like the LVO and LGT. They are a true spectacle and can be incredibly overwhelming, especially if you are new to the competitive scene. Not only that, but they require a significant time commitment, since they usually take place over 3 days. They are also quite intensive too, and are a test of endurance and concentration. They are, however, incredibly fun events to attend and generally have a broad spectrum of skill levels in attendance, from the very best players in the game to people who are attending their first event. As someone who has been to quite a few of these tournaments, I wouldn't recommend them for your very first event. It's better to start small and work up to the big ones so you don't get overwhelmed. Now that we've gone through the different types of tournaments, hopefully you've been able to dial in on one that suits yourself. Next up is finding an event to attend. You might think that this should be easy. Surely there's a convenient website where upcoming events are readily accessible so that you can pick and choose the perfect one for you. Unfortunately, this isn't really the case. Things have gotten better in the last few years, but unless you know where to look, finding a Warhammer event for you can still be a chore. I fully appreciate the challenge that newer players face when trying to navigate the internet and track down tournaments, so let's break down some of those barriers and talk about the best ways to source events. Naturally, where you are in the world has a big impact on finding an event. Countries like the UK and the US have a vibrant tournament ecosystem which are supported by well-established organisations like the UKTC and FLG. On that note, if you are located in the UK, I highly recommend attending an event run by the UKTC. I've been to a lot of them myself and they are very professionally organised and super popular. Other countries, like Ireland, where I am from, do not have this distinct, well-structured system, so tracking down an event can be really tough. Thankfully, there are 2 websites which make the hunt a little bit easier. Firstly, if a tournament has been registered in advance with the International Tournament Circuit, or ITC, it will appear on the Frontline Gaming website in the events calendar. Unfortunately, this website is super clunky and outdated, and it can be a little bit frustrating trying to sort through the list while it ever so slowly loads, but if you like taking a trip to early 2000s web design, you'll love this. Additionally, it will only return results of tournaments which are registered with the ITC, and many smaller local RTTs are not, so they will not show up here. Alternatively, you can search for an event on Best Coast Pairings, better known as BCP. This website is easy to navigate and has some good filtering capabilities and a solid user interface. However, it will only return results which have been registered on the BCP app. So if you are looking for an upcoming event near you, it's probably best to start with these, but if they don't return any results, that doesn't mean there's no events on in your vicinity. Reaching out to a local gaming group or store is the next best bet. There's normally a Facebook group or Discord server for something like this, and at least some of the players there should have a decent knowledge of upcoming nearby events. Naturally, it can be a little bit daunting to break into a social group like this, and I do understand that if you have any amount of social anxiety, this can be difficult. However, generally, groups like this are very helpful and welcoming, and can be a fantastic resource for getting practice games in too. Finally, when it comes to selecting an event to attend, there are some important peripheral considerations to keep in mind. Cost and free time are 2 of these factors. If you are traveling for an event, the expense can pile up pretty quickly between travel, accommodation, food, and the event itself, so keep this in mind and don't leave it too late to book the hotels. Going to an event as part of a group is also a fantastic shared experience. If the opportunity presents itself, I would strongly recommend attending your first event in this way. Firstly, it can reduce the cost of travel and accommodation, but much more importantly, more experienced friends can help you out during the event with anything you are uncertain about. That about covers how to hunt down an event. As I say, it's a lot more complicated than it needs to be, requiring rituals, witchcraft, and getting to know everyone who seem to know everything. Once you have managed to pick an event to attend though, the next thing to do is familiarize yourself with as much information about the event as you can. We're going to cover what that means next. Now that you've chosen an event to attend, you're probably starting to get really excited, but before you crack out the paintbrushes and start rolling some practice dice, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. A well-organized event will have something called an event pack available well in advance of the tournament. An event pack typically contains quite a lot of information, specifically what you can expect from the event and the organizers, and what is expected of you as an attendee. So let's take a minute to explain some of that. You should view the event pack as a useful tool for helping you decide what army you're going to play at an event and the composition of your list. It's normally available on the website or Facebook page linked to the event, and typically an event pack will provide you with a lot of useful information like the timing of rounds, what facilities are available, what missions are being played, and the layout of the terrain on the boards. It will also tell you how to register for the event, how the game pairings are conducted, and the ranking system in play. All of this is very important to know ahead of time and should help you in your preparation for the big day. Additionally, an event pack will provide you with information about what you are expected to bring to the event and the standards you are expected to uphold. Normally, an event will expect you to bring game aids, relevant rule references, dice, tape measures, your army, and all the good stuff. It will also have important information about the standard of painting which is expected, how conversions and proxies are handled. Most events require a battle-ready standard of painting for models, which is achievable for any painter and overall ensures that the games are aesthetically pleasing. An event pack will also include information on what FAQs, erratas, special rulings, and so on are in play. Some events even go so far as to include their own custom rulings on confusing interactions to ensure that gameplay progresses smoothly. A very important thing to note here is something we call the cutoff date. This is a cutoff point for new rules, codexes, and balance tweaks, meaning any rules released after that date will not be in play for the event. There's a variety of reasons for this, including facilitating players who may have been planning their army for quite a while beforehand, only for it now to suddenly change moments before the event. It also means you won't have to worry about new rulings, codexes, or other upsets in the weeks immediately before the event, and normally these cutoff dates are 1 to 2 weeks before the tournament begins. Reading the event pack is an important thing to do to help you prepare for an event, and it's good to be respectful to the TO who put time and effort into crafting this document. A lot of veteran tournament players don't read the pack and tend to boast about it, which is pretty weird and ultimately can cause upsets at the gaming table. My advice, be prepared. Understand the event pack. It allows you to practice better and have more information coming into a tournament, meaning there is less to confuse you on the day. So you've picked out a tournament to go to and you've read the event pack. Now it is time to start making a personal plan for how you are going to approach this tournament. Time is a precious resource for wargamers, especially in the months and weeks before a tournament. So taking an evening to plan out your preparations and structure your hobby time is, I would say, vital to ensuring you arrive at a tournament ready and in good condition. Broadly speaking, there's two aspects to this: practicing your gameplay and painting your lists. Let's take a little time to talk about how you can attack both of these problems. Focusing on practicing your gameplay for a minute, it can be difficult to optimize the limited amount of time that most wargamers have to practice 40k in the build up to an event, especially if you are struggling to get an army painted in parallel. However, if you've been following my advice so far, you'll know what missions are coming up thanks to having read the event pack, meaning you can narrow down the selection of missions to play to just those few. Picking the army and list that you are going to bring is also partly dictated by these missions and the terrain format too. It's better to settle on a list earlier rather than chopping and changing units every single time you play a practice game. Try to become familiar with the play pattern of your army and how it interacts with the mission. Does it have any bad matchups, particular weaknesses on a specific terrain layout? It can even be good just to practice deploying your force to see how it looks on the table. Most importantly though, if you have the opportunity to play practice games, use a timer. At an event, a game is expected to be concluded after a specific amount of time, usually between 2.5 and 3 hours. If you have never played 40k under the pressure of a clock, make sure your first experience of this is not the first game of an event. You will panic, get stressed out, play sloppily, and make mistakes. This doesn't mean you have to practice with a chess clock, but understanding that the round ends at a specific time and playing to that limit in your practice games will greatly help you. The more games you play in the lead up to an event, the more familiar you will become with your rules. To some extent, there is an expectation on you, the player, that you will know the rules of your army when you arrive at the table. To avoid accidental mistakes and slip-ups, get that practicing. Read your data sheets and know your abilities. Better still, create a cheat sheet for your specific army which highlights key moves, gotchas, and abilities. This is useful for both you and your opponent. We all make mistakes at the table from time to time, but we all want to play the game correctly and fairly too. So make sure that the learning of your army is a key aspect for practicing for an event. Pivoting now to the painting aspect of an event. As someone who takes the painting part of a tournament almost as seriously as the gameplay, I assure you, from past experience, you cannot paint your entire army in the 2 weeks leading up to an event. As I said, most events will expect you to have your army painted to a 3-color battle ready level, which is achievable for any level of hobbyist. However, if you want to go that extra mile or you take pride in the presentation of your army, then you need to make a schedule. I cannot stress this enough. Start painting your army early. It is going to take you longer than you think, and you don't want to be up until 3 AM the night before, huffing mineral spirits as you pray to Khorne that your oil wash will dry and cure before you have to ram everything into a carry case. That definitely didn't happen to me. Make a list of the miniatures that need to be painted for your army. Organize them in preference of units which are guaranteed to be in your list over units which may get cut out of it. Establish a realistic time budget. How many hours per week can you reasonably spend painting? Is that going to cut into your practice game time? And how much of either of these are you willing to compromise on? These are difficult and personal questions to answer, since we all want to achieve different things by going to an event. And ideally, you'll already have a nicely painted army and won't need to worry about this. But even after having attended dozens of tournaments, I always find myself with a unit to paint in the month before. Speaking from a personal standpoint, I've gotten very stressed about painting my army. It has impacted my enjoyment of events, and I'd rather people avoid this problem than repeating it. So take my advice, get the brushes out nice and early, and avoid that late night grind. Finally, for this section, discussion with your peers and friends is a fundamental part of the planning process. Different perspectives on lists and units can open your eyes to interactions and possibilities that you may not have seen. Maybe your friends are experts in different factions and can poke holes in your list by exploiting weaknesses that they can capitalize on. Better yet, maybe you have access to faction-specific Discords or Facebook groups where you can ask more seasoned players about their experiences. Just remember, don't let people shoot down your ideas without a solid explanation. Your opinions and ideas are valid and worth hearing, and just because your list may be unconventional doesn't mean it's bad. Here on the Red Path, our public Discord is always buzzing with chat about world leaders and other factions, and our Patreon Discord channel gives you access to more focused competitive discussions around attending events, to give just one example. So make sure you integrate yourself into the discussion, spitball ideas, and absorb information like a sponge. The week before a tournament is a cocktail of stress, adrenaline, excitement, hype, and panic. Depending on how well you have prepared and planned, you can come into this week brimming with confidence and relaxing, or chugging coffee and slap chopping Space Marines. As someone who has seen both sides of this coin and faced the consequences, you want to avoid as much stress as possible, especially if it's your first event. You're already going to be very excited and anticipating the games, so pace yourself, eat well, and get a good night's sleep. It's usually around a week before you have to submit your list, and if the event is using Best Coast pairings, following this, the lists will all become viewable by the attendees. This can be a little bit fun and a little bit daunting, but I always enjoy reading what the field is going to look like and getting an idea for what I can expect when I show up. When you're submitting your own list though, double check it one last time before sending it off. I've forgotten some key unit add-ons before, so don't make the mistake I did. Print out anything which you think you're going to need, what would be helpful at the table, game aids, your list, the event pack, the mission, round timers, whatever you feel will make yourself more comfortable once you step up to the table. Make sure you have it to hand and ready. On that note, Make a checklist, one for the units in your army, dice and other things like that, and another if you are traveling to the event, like clothes, bathroom essentials and all that good stuff. It's very easy to leave things behind, and I know of a friend or two who have left key units on the shelf in a rush to leave the house. So put your whole army on the table, open your list roster and double check that every unit is there before you put it into your carry case. Once you've got all that done and you've packed your dice, tape, red path objective markers, so on and so forth, you're about ready to go, and you're gonna have a really good time. But before we close this video out, I'm going to quickly run through how you can look after your mental health in this pre-tournament stage. Tournaments and their preparation can be stressful events, and if you go into them unprepared, they can add unnecessary anxiety to your life. Hopefully some of what I've said today will help you avoid that. Of course, there is a variety of other hidden factors like social anxiety, self-confidence and external pressures which can impact your experience and enjoyment. If you're worried about attending a tournament because you think you're going to run into that guy, or people who will get annoyed at you for not knowing the game 100%, then you don't need to stress. The vast majority of tournament players just want to have a good time, play Warhammer and make some new friends. A lot of the stories which get passed around local scenes about tryhard players, win at all costs and the like are usually incredibly blown out of proportion or complete fabrications, so don't let this be a barrier to you having fun. However, managing your expectations of an event and understanding what you want to get out of an event is an important consideration, and one which can make sure that your mental health will not decline following an event. Realistically, if you have never attended a tournament, you're probably not going to win your very first one, and that is totally okay. I won 2 out of 5 games at my first event and had an absolute blast. And even now, as someone who goes to events every other month, I'm not an amazing player who picks up trophies everywhere. That's totally okay too. If you go into an event expecting to win every single game, you're probably going to come away disappointed, especially if it's your first one. If you can assess your own ability and skill from a neutral perspective, you'll probably be able to guess with reasonable accuracy how you are going to do. But if you fall short of this, treat it as a learning opportunity rather than a failure. We're going to talk about that more in a later video, but management of expectations starts in the pre-tournament stage, so keep that in mind. And lastly, I just want to reiterate, if you have never attended a tournament before and are considering taking the plunge, please give it a go. It may not be your thing, but odds are that you will actually have a really good time. And if you take some of this on board, you'll come into the event ready to decimate your foes and collect battle scars. Your army deserves to be shown to more people, so get out there and get playing. If you've enjoyed this video, we're going to have a lot more coming in the next 2 weeks, and next up is going to be a video on attending the actual tournament itself and all the considerations that you need to keep in mind for that. If you're new to the Red Path and you liked what you saw, please let me know what you thought of the video down below. Drop us a like, subscribe, all the good stuff that you know helps the algorithm. Additionally, we have a whole host of other content here on YouTube, which we would love for you to watch too. We're also on Twitch twice a week and Spotify as well with our podcast. If you want to join the conversation, we have a vibrant Discord community, which is always buzzing with competitive chatter, hobby-focused things, and everything else in between. We'd love for you to be part of that too. Additionally, if you want to support the channel, what we do here, and keep us going, we have a Patreon. This will give you access to one of 2 or both focus channels in our Discord community. One of these is for hobby, the other is for competitive. We'll help you get better at whichever one of these you want to improve on. Finally, I've been Dara, and you've been watching The Red Path. We've got a lot more good stuff coming, and I hope you enjoyed this video. But, as always, if you have, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill, maim, burn.